We just got breaking news that Ripple is going to be raising more than $500 million from some of the giants of the traditional investment world. But guys, this has not come without its controversy, and a lot of people are pointing to the valuation Ripple is raising at and asking some serious questions on what is going on with their XRP holdings. Well, in this video, I want to break down a brand new article that was just put out about this, really calling into question how much money Ripple is actually worth. Like always, you're supporting me so much to this channel. Thank you to everyone who takes the time to like these videos and subscribe to the channel. These two simple things really do help me out so much. Also, if you have any good place to buy some XRP, make sure to check out my favorite exchange uphold down in the description of this video. With that said, let's jump right into it, and I hope you guys enjoy the content. So let's start out this video and address the fact that Ripple is raising $500 million. And guys, this is not $500 million raised from just anyone. They actually had Citadel, one of the largest financial giants, in this raise. So Ripple is clearly gaining the attention of the financial elite in the traditional financial system. Now, despite this, there has been a lot of FUD put out about this raise, and it's one of those things that is always going to come with everything Ripple does. And just so you guys are aware, this is not unique. I was an investor in the early days for Tesla, the early days of Nvidia, the early days of Palantir. This is not uncommon, and in fact, honestly, something I really like to see. For whatever reason, whenever you have an investment like XRP, an investment like Tesla, not only is there this huge community of people who really see it and really get it and really see the value proposition, but for some reason, these game-changing, transformational investments always attract haters. Now, I don't know why that's the case, but honestly, it's something I kind of like because it's been a consistent track record with almost every investment that I've made a ton of money on. So I say welcome it. I like to see it. And I say this just checks off another box for showing that this is going to be another hyper successful investment. With that said, though, let's jump into the FUD and see what we're seeing in terms of why people are pointing to this as a bad thing. And there's some really interesting things we're going to cover at the end of the video, really jumping into some facts that I don't think a lot of people know in terms of what Ripple does with their escrow. So you're definitely going to want to make sure you stick around for that. Let's take a look at the article, though. This was actually from Laura Shin. Now, if you know Laura Shin, you would know that essentially she is an OG in the cryptocurrency industry, but has really fallen off extremely hard. She runs this podcast that no one watches, and her new way of essentially generating clicks and views is to simply FUD Ripple and XRP. So I don't know why she went down this path. I think it's failed crypto journalism, and this is where she's ended up. But essentially, she put out this article saying Ripple, the company, is not worth anything outside of its XRP holdings. No one is using their tech, no usage on the blockchain/network. So let's start off and jump into this core headline statement that she put out there. First of all, this is the complete opposite of the narrative that we consistently hear from people like her who say, oh, I understand Ripple, the company, what Ripple's doing is super valuable, but XRP is worthless. Now, this is the complete flip side of the argument saying, oh, well, the company's not worth anything, but the XRP is worth $40 billion. So it's a total joke. They'll just make up whatever argument they want at that given time and say, okay, this is what we're going with. It's the same exact thing with XRP being a bank coin. When I first got into XRP, it was all this FUD. It's a banker's coin. It's helping the traditional bankers. They're in bed with all these banks. And then suddenly banks are looked at as a good thing. And the new narrative was, oh, well, Ripple's not landing any banks. They just pivot to whatever argument is going to make sense at the time. There's never any facts or reason or proof they could point to. And we're going to dissect that in detail when we take a look at this. But the first statement outside of that just real doozy of an opener is the fact that they're essentially, or she's essentially pointing out down here, that the company owns XRP worth $80 billion. So why is the market valuating it at $40 billion? She's saying, and I know this is a little bit more of a nuanced question that a lot of people might want to know the answer to. She's essentially asking the question, if Ripple holds all this XRP worth $80 billion, why are they only being valued at $40 billion in this raise? And that's actually a pretty good question. Now, from a cryptocurrency journalist, right? I talk about this all the time on the channel. If I was a cryptocurrency journalist, I would not be asking that question because in my opinion, you should probably know the answer to that if you're a cryptocurrency journalist. But let's just say someone else was asking the question. It's a really good question. And there's really two answers to this. One is the more obvious answer, in my opinion. And that's the fact that XRP is not liquid. It's sitting in escrow. How much money would you pay for an XRP that you can't sell for 10 years? Well, my answer would be, well, I'm not going to pay the current price of it, right? I have to get some kind of discount on that XRP. If you're giving me an asset with the clause that I can't sell it for 10 years, I'm not going to give you full value for it, because I would just buy the asset if I was going to be paying full value. Why would I accept the fact that I can't sell it for 10 years? So automatically, just based off of the lack of liquidity in Ripple's escrow, it has to have a discounted value associated with it. That's just common sense. That's how these things work. I mean, you're not going to pay full price for Ripple's escrow of XRP when most of that XRP can't be released. It just doesn't make any sense. So that's the first thing that's really easy to understand. If Ripple has $80 billion worth of XRP, you're not going to pay $80 billion for that XRP. You might value that XRP at half, right? 40 billion. Let's just throw it at a random number. There's no equation you can use. You can't point to X, Y, and Z and say, this is why we're doing it. It's totally random. It's an arbitrary made up number of these things that have never been done before. Everyone knows you have to discount it by some amount, but no one knows how much you're really discounting it by, except the people who went into the deal. Those people said, okay, we're willing to pay 30 billion, 10 billion, 25 billion for the XRP Ripple owns in the escrow. But there's another key term in there that has to be understood. The XRP Ripple owns in the escrow. It has been widely reported, and once again, something you would expect a cryptocurrency journalist to know, that Ripple doesn't own all the XRP in the escrow. A lot of different companies and entities that we have seen public proof of have stated that they have an option contract on the escrow. So they actually own part of that escrow. So let me give this, for example. If Ripple has 80 billion in the escrow, right? And let's say 20 billion is already allocated to other companies / individuals, well, then whatever company is raising money for Ripple is not going to give Ripple a valuation for XRP not owned by Ripple. So clearly there's another discount to be had there on that XRP holdings. So Laura Shin, the cryptocurrency journalist, is coming out and pointing out the fact that Ripple owns 80 billion XRP. It's so bad that they were valued at $40 billion. But to be honest, it totally checks out in my opinion. 40 billion is about the same size as Coinbase, but Coinbase had the benefit of going public. When Coinbase went public, it was like 15 billion, maybe even less. So Ripple is being valued at essentially at least 3.5 times Coinbase, and they're not even public yet. When this thing goes public, it's probably going to be close to $100 billion. You don't get full valuation on these private rounds. The private investors want to make money, right? They don't want to pay public rates for what this thing's going to be when it's IPOing. So it's going to be a little lower. So it's a haircut on that private discount because they're doing this private deal. You've got the illiquid XRP, and you're still at a 40 billion valuation. You don't even know how much of the XRP in the escrow Ripple actually even owns. So the valuation makes total sense. The idea that this is somehow showing that the XRP is not worth anything or Ripple software isn't worth anything is a total joke. I mean, Ripple just bought $3 billion businesses. How could you possibly say that those $3 billion businesses that Ripple just purchased aren't worth anything? It shows a complete lack of understanding of the cryptocurrency market. And, you know, I don't like to come on here and be like, oh, all these people don't know anything, just ignore everything they're saying. But when you actually break down some of the points being made by these people, you just sit there shaking their head. Like, how little could you possibly, how could you be a cryptocurrency journalist and not understand these key points? Also, how could you look at Ripple up to a $40 billion valuation, significantly larger than Circle, who is in the private market at like 3 billion, significantly larger than Coinbase in the private market, maybe like 5 billion. How could you look at Ripple raising at a $40 billion valuation, probably the largest valuation we have ever seen from a cryptocurrency company in the private market, and look at that like it's some negative thing? Also, look at who's investing. Citadel Securities, one of the most important, critical, large-scale market makers in the traditional market, putting significant capital behind this. And you just have a random cryptocurrency journalist who doesn't know the first thing about it saying this means Ripple's worth nothing. It doesn't make any sense. And it's the kind of FUD, unfortunately, we will continue to see. Now, one thing I do want to talk about is if you follow me on X, you probably saw me call that out pretty aggressively. Now, I will say that's not my normal kind of state. As you guys probably know, I'm one of those people who comes on these videos and I try to keep everything as professional as possible. But one of the things that I just have zero tolerance for is washed up reporters trying to get clicks with FUD headlines. I mean, it's a total joke. It's essentially saying, hey, my career is over. Therefore, I'm going to put out a whole bunch of misinformation to the market so people click on it and I can try to revitalize whatever I have left. So, I have zero tolerance for that. It's a total joke in my opinion. And all it does is misinform good people who are trying to make smart decisions. And it's just a total shame that people are willing to completely sacrifice their entire career and reputation to go out there and put out things that are patently false that they know significantly better. To be honest, I don't think Laura Shin actually thinks these things are true. If she does, then I'm more concerned about how in the world she has gotten to where she is. But let's completely leave that out of it. The point is what she's saying is obviously and patently wrong. Every single company that invested in this $500 million raise disagrees with her. And simply looking at the facts and the result of this, it's absolutely outstanding, incredibly bullish, and a record raise for the crypto industry. And any journalist with any actual merit to what they're doing would come out and say this is a significant milestone for the cryptocurrency industry and a record-breaking raise. But clearly, you're always going to have people on the other side of that. It was the same way with Tesla. It was the same way with Palantir. And in my opinion, as frustrating as it can be, it's one of the most bullish things. Even the people who hate XRP and hate Ripple, they literally can't stop thinking about it. It's the only thing on their mind. They want to write articles about it. They want to talk about it. They just can't stop. And in my opinion, historically, when you have a great investment and you have this weird group of angry, that investment people, normally a really good sign you're onto something special. Guys, thank you so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed this update. And for now, Mickle out.